Good morning, Liberty North, AP Dual Credit Psychology. It is February 16th, and this is snow day, which I hope you guys are enjoying. So we're going to go over our AP learning targets for Unit 8. So we're starting a new unit. And this is motivation, emotion, and stress. Okay, your module should be up in Canvas. I published it yesterday. And then on the board, I sent pics out via Twitter. And then also the pics of the notes are on the Canvas module now. And I'm going to try to do this without driving up to school and using the board. So if it turns out really bad, then I'll just record one of the periods tomorrow if we have school on the notes. Okay. And then if that doesn't work out good, I'll probably just drive up there and do it. So I'm going to be going back and forth, and your AP learning targets, number 1 to 5, which are all motivation today. So we're just going to go over motivation today and cover AP learning targets 1 and 5, which are also on your module. Okay, which I'm going to be going back and forth from. So I'm going to be clipping back and forth here. Okay, so learning target number 1 and number 5. Okay, so actually number 5, which is discuss the biological underpinnings of motivation, including needs, drives, and homeostasis. Those are going to number 5 is kind of in 1, 2, and 4. So, but I put it up on with number 1 on the board and on the picture that I sent with you. So we're going to go over that. So we're going to cover number 1, identify the basic motivational concepts and theories. To understand the behaviors of humans and other animals, and discuss the biological underpinnings of motivation, including needs, drives, homeostasis. Okay. All right. So basically, there are 2 categories of motivational theories. All right. So there are 2 major things that motivate us. Right. They are needs, okay, which are biological. So we are motivated by biological needs. Right. And we're also motivated by social wants. Right. So in the world of motivation, we have these 2 categories, and the things that motivate us as humans and in our behavior, we tend to put in these 2 categories. Okay. So if we go to needs over here in the red, needs are biological drives. All right. They are instincts. They're also referred to in the world of motivation as pushes. In other words, they push or drive us towards certain behaviors. They're intrinsic motivators, meaning they're internal. Okay. All right. So anytime that we refer to any of those needs in that category, they're generally referred to as either a need or a biological motivator. Most commonly, biological motivator. Okay. All right. So again, these include instincts, pushes, intrinsic motivators. All right. Then the second category is our wants. Okay, or what we call social motivators, right? So, and then these are what we call generally as incentives or rewards. They're pulls in the world of motivation. So these are pushes, these are pulls, okay? And these tend to be extrinsic, meaning that they're external, and the external world has given them value, all right? So, how much do I get paid? Rewards, incentives, okay? All right? So now, both are very strong and powerful motivators. I think in our world today, we generally believe that needs and biological drives are the strongest motivators. But really, it depends on culture. It really does. Culture has a huge impact on defining and indicating which motivators are the most powerful. In our world today, we see these needs, or they're actually not even needs, these wants, these motivators, these social motivators have a lot of power. And we spend a lot of time in our culture trying to make these needs when they're just simply wants. So especially if you watch commercials at Christmas, our culture wants you to think that everything's a need so that you go out and buy it. Now, if you go to third world countries, they are definitely prominently motivated by this. Because they generally don't have a lot of their basic needs fit or fulfilled, which we are privileged in America. We're very lucky and we're very fortunate in that most of our, basic biological, psychological needs are kind of met for us. or we're in an environment to where it's a little bit better for us to accomplish those. So these tend to stand out a little bit more in our culture, okay? All right, so both are powerful, both are in our culture, both influence our behavior. Just make sure you know the difference between the two, okay? All right, number two. Let me go back here, number two. Number two is compare and contrast motivational theories, including the strengths and weaknesses of each, okay? All right, so we have our motivational categories: needs, biological motivators, wants, and social motivators, okay? All right, so there's going to be 5 specific theories that the book touches on. There are more in motivation, but I also think there's people that argue that there should be less, because I think as we go over these, the first one I think is probably the biggest one, and I think generally most of these other theories could be put back into number 1, which is actually our drive reduction theory, okay? And basically what it's saying is that, again, if you go back and remember, our hypothalamus and our limbic system controls our internal state of balance, which we call homeostasis in motivational theory and in psychology. And basically what happens is my hypothalamus keeps me in that state of internal balance. And if I get out of that balance, it drives me, motivates me to act in a way or behave in a certain way that brings me back into that balance or that homeostasis. So again, 3 easiest examples are thirst. So if I'm thirsty, if my body needs fluid, I am out of homeostasis. My hypothalamus senses that and then drives me to get a drink. Okay, if I'm hungry, it senses I'm out of homeostasis and it drives me to get food. You know, if I'm tired, my body needs to rest. I need REM sleep for my mind. You know, the hypothalamus is going to sense that. And it's going to drive me to get rest. Okay. So, and on the board I have simply, drive reduction theory is basically there's a need, okay, which is created by a lack of homeostasis. The hypothalamus senses that, then it drives me to fulfill that and get that back, that internal state of balance back, and then it guides me to a behavior that helps my body do that, okay? But again, that could apply, that's basically a biological theory. Because we need to be in homeostasis, but I think it can apply to the social wants as well. That we need relationships, we need, our social environment, our home life to be in balance as well. Okay. All right. The second theory is called the arousal theory, and this one actually gets a lot of study and a lot of research done on it. It's actually very, very fascinating. But kind of what it basically states is that we are all driven, so it's biological, to obtain a certain amount of arousal, or basically adrenaline or norepinephrine in our bodies. And that we all have these different levels, which to me, again, kind of gets it back to homeostasis and that drive reduction theory. But a great area that they're looking at is what we call our sensation seekers, or our adrenaline junkies, who seem to be motivated to obtain certain levels and higher levels of norepinephrine and adrenaline. And these guys will do extreme behaviors to basically get that adrenaline rush. And again, when we first started studying this population, we just kind of thought they were just a little bit crazy. But now we know that internally, they are different, and that their bodies need this level of arousal, and it's motivated to get it. And so whether it be base jumping, bullfighting, I know there's been studies on the bullfighters in Spain and base jumpers. What they've actually found is that they have higher levels of an enzyme, which is called MAO, which is monoamine oxidase. No, actually they have lower levels. Sorry, they have low levels of MAO. And so it's an internal state. But because of that, they are motivated, they are driven to obtain arousal, which again is basically the adrenaline rush, if you've heard of that. Okay, so that's the arousal theory. Now, with the arousal theory, though, is the Yorkshire's Datsun law, which basically, and the book points that out. I think it's a vocab term, which is why I want to make sure I cover it. Which basically says that it goes along with the arousal theory, but it does say that it is unhealthy to get too much arousal. So again, if I get too much norepinephrine, if I get too much adrenaline, obviously that can lead to panic attacks, anxiety, irregular heart rhythms, and stuff like that. So, for most of us, that is a danger. We are motivated by being aroused, by needing that norepinephrine and adrenaline, but we are also, it's capped. Where our sensation seekers, it doesn't seem to be an issue where they can get too much of it, and they need it in extremes. We're going to watch a video of the Red Bull Stratus jump, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but we're going to watch that video, and actually it's on the module. Felix Baumgarten, who is definitely an adrenaline junkie, he performs these extreme stunts, and then he'll tell you, he said, I feel normal for 3 to 5 months maybe, but then after that, he's got to be planning the next thing. And I think the jump that we're going to watch, I think he was planning and working on it for 7 years. So it's like, he feels good, but then he's just going to need more and more, which is kind of, again, evidence that the arousal theory does exist and it's out there, but it's different for different people. Okay. The third theory is evolutionary theory, which is basically our need biologically is to survive. Okay. So, survival of the fittest. We have innate behaviors, instincts that, are programmed in us to help us survive. Okay. So that's obviously a very powerful motivator. We're all motivated to survive. It's a drive. Okay. Number 4 is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is pretty popular. A lot of you have probably heard of Maslowian theory. It's in child development, business. There are people who actually live their lives according to Maslow's hierarchy. It's one of the great enduring theories of psychology. Mr. Clark, you guys are all probably too young to know, but Mr. Clark, who opened the building as one of our social studies teachers, was a fantastic teacher, taught AP World History and AP European History. He was a Maslowian guy, so he lived a Maslow. Everything could go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, which I have a picture on the notes. And again, I want to point out here, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. So everything according to Maslowian theory is biological. Okay. It's an instinct. We're driven towards these things. These are not wants. Okay. It's not Maslow's hierarchy of wants. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. So at the bottom, and it goes in a succession. So the goal is at the very top of Maslow's theory is called self-actualization, which is what we are all driven. Maslow believed that we had an innate drive, which he called self-actualizing tendency. Throughout our life, we're trying to obtain self-actualization, which is basically to fulfill our unique potential. Now, we have to move up in steps, though, and we have to conquer, if you will, or satisfy certain needs first before we can have and obtain self-actualization. So our entire life journey, we're driven to fulfill these and are motivated to fulfill these needs so that we can get to self-actualization. So the first one is biological. So those are your basic, also called basic needs. So in any of our biological, so food, hunger, sleep, shelter, but there's a lot that can go there, right? And that biological is we're talking about. And the more and more we study things, the more and more we kind of believe that a lot of things that we think are wants are actually needs, which I'll go over. I have 2 in number 1, which I skipped, but I'll go back and get those. So biological needs first, then safety. Okay, so then we need to feel safe and secure, right? Then we have love and belongingness, all right? So basically we have a need for relationships because we're social animals, okay? So again, part of that evolutionary theory, if we are isolated, we're less likely to survive. So we need each other, we need relationships. So we're gonna seek that, and then we're gonna seek esteem needs, which are basically, again, that gets back to understanding who I am, a need to have achievement, competence, know myself. Okay. And then we have self-actualization. Okay. So, and that's the order that he put them in. A lot of people think that possibly 3 and 4 are out of order, and that you can't really love and have successful relationships without understanding yourself and being competent in yourself and knowing yourself. But Maslow believed that these are there and they're in the right order. Now, again, we've had people who used to think that not all of these are wants. One of the big knocks on Maslow's theory was that they used to think that some of these are wants and they're not needs. But Maslow said they were needs, and now that we study and with further research and time, we realize that he was correct. These are actually needs, and they're all very powerful needs and they're all can be part of the drive reduction theory. Okay. Because we need relationships, we need to feel safe, we need our biological needs met. We need to feel esteem and achievement so that we can thrive and obtain self-actualization. Okay, now again, Maslow believed that our journey in life was motivated to get self-actualization, and then when we had it, the motivation and the drive was to keep it, because you could lose it all within a day. And there's plenty of examples of people who were self-actualized but then dropped all the way down to basic biological needs in a day, where they didn't feel safe. They lost their relationships. And I think some of you guys could probably relate to that in high school. Middle school and high school age is very rough on the relationship part, and esteem. That's where Maslow's going to say you guys probably are at this point. You're working on 3 and 4. But we have people in our school that don't feel safe. I mean, they don't have a home, they don't have shelter. And we also have kids in our school that are struggling with their biological needs. So just those basic needs that we all kind of take for granted. So, okay. Also on there, I have self-efficacy, which again is a part of self-actualization, which I have also on number 1. And it's kind of a big part of Maslow's theory. It's becoming a big term in education. But self-efficacy is a need, and we are driven to achieve self-efficacy. And it's a part of self-actualization. But basically, the idea is that you know yourself and you accept yourself. Okay, so you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, and not that you're not trying to continually improve on those, but that you are accepting of yourself. And that's hard. That's a long journey, and that's why it's a part of self-actualizing tendency. But Maslow, again, said self-efficacy was a need. It was a drive, okay? It used to believe that theorists thought, no, we don't need self-efficacy. It's just something we want. It would make things better, and it would help socially, but we don't need it. Now we need it, okay? All right, number 5 would be cognitive dissonance theory, which, again, could go back to drive reduction. The cognitive dissonance is basically this. It's when my beliefs do not match my actions, okay? It's an internal state of conflict, and we are motivated to not be there. It's very uncomfortable. It can be very healthy if we stay there for long periods of time. But if we're ever in a situation, whether it be in a relationship or life or at work or at school, where our beliefs do not match our actions, we have this internal state of conflict called cognitive dissonance, and we are immediately motivated to get out of it. And there's only 2 ways out of it, really. You change your beliefs or you change your actions, okay? And what we do in our society is we try to change our beliefs. We justify, we rationalize. A great example I use every year is, if I believe and I know that smoking is bad for me or vaping is bad for me and it could kill me, but I still do it, I'm in a state of cognitive dissonance. So I've got to change my actions, which is stop doing those things, or I've got to change my belief, which generally in our culture, we like to rationalize or change our thinking about what we're doing. And so we'll do that rather than just actually stopping the bad thing, okay? So, it's a big theory. It's a big social theory. But again, I think that you could look at it in drive reduction, that if we're in a state of cognitive dissonance, we are not in homeostasis. We're not in equilibrium, which is why there's internal conflict and it's uncomfortable, okay? All right, AP learning target number 3, I think just says, what are some big examples? Describe classic research findings and specific motivations, which I think I've talked about with sensation seeking. The book goes into eating, eating, which again is a part of drive reduction theory. However, in our culture, we can eat and turn this biological need into a social need, and that we don't just eat when we're hungry. We eat as a social event, that type of thing, as a comfort food, okay, so on and so forth. And then it talks about, it gives social examples, which I've given plenty of, okay? And then AP learning target number 4. So again, real quickly, AP learning target number 3 is just give some examples. So we talked about sensation seeking. The book talks about eating, social motives, which we kind of have talked about throughout the notes of this, of these 5 AP learning targets. All right, then number 4, historical individuals, okay? Several of these you're going to already have in there. So number 1 would be William James. Okay, so William James did a lot of theoretical work in motivation and emotion. He actually has an emotional theory named after him. And he's also, again, the father of American psychology. You guys already have him in there, studied under Wundt. Alfred Kinsey is in the book, who did also some work with motivational and emotion theory. Abraham Maslow, which we just talked about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow might already be in there as well because he's considered by some the father of humanistic psychology, which again, humanistic psychology, again, the goal, what motivates us the most in our behavior is that quest for self-actualization, to self-growth, to be better. Stanley Schachter also has an emotional theory named after him, did research in motivation and emotion. But he has what's called the two-factor theory, which is a huge theory in emotion, which we'll talk about. And then the last name is Hans Selye, which if you remember, we already covered stress, but he's known as Dr. Stress. So he should already be in your book because he was the big one when we talked about stress back when we did our AB personality test. So he is the one that really kind of, through his research, discovered the biological impacts of stress. Okay. All right. So what I did is I just went down the notes in order. So I hope that was okay, since I didn't really have anything to show you guys, but had my little cards. Okay. Now going back to number one, when you look at the pictures either on Twitter or in the module, you'll see that down at the bottom under needs, I have self-efficacy and achievement. So I'm just going to end with that real quickly. So we've talked about self-efficacy, and again, that's a great example of it's a huge buzzword today in education and in our culture. And self-efficacy, again, which is the ability to know yourself and then accept yourself, we used to think was a want. Okay, that it makes life better and it's a want, but we don't need it. Now we know it's a need. And according to Maslow said it was a part of self-actualization, but we are driven to know ourselves and understand ourselves. We have an innate desire to do that. Okay. Also in there, I have achievement. Achievement we used to think was a need, a want. It was social. It's nice to achieve things, but we don't need to. And now we know that achievement motivation might be and I think in the book even echoes this research, might be the most powerful motivator that we have in our culture today. And we are driven to achieve in all aspects of our life, some more than others, but we all have a biological basic drive for achievement. And Maslow would say the same thing because that's a part of self-actualization. But a great story is the Ralston story, which is in the book. It was also in the movie 121 Hours or 128 Hours, I think. So he's the rock climber who got stuck. He was out climbing by himself on a weekend and got stuck. Didn't have a phone. People didn't know where he was. And so he was stuck on this rock without food or water or shelter through Wednesday. And at Wednesday, he had kind of given up. He had a video camera, so he recorded his goodbyes. And just had really kind of accepted that he was going to die and pass on. But that night, then he had a dream. He had a dream about being a father. And that kicked in what we believe in is his achievement motivation. So, and what's so amazing about it is what it enabled him to do, which was we consider by doctors to be superhuman. So, after, 4 days basically of being stuck on this rock without food or water, he has a dream. And as a result of that dream and that picture of being a father, that achievement motivation, he cut off his own arm with a blunt pocket knife. So he sawed through it, which doctors will tell you after that should have killed him. He should have bled out. Then he rappelled 60 feet down off the rock. And then he walked 5 miles, I think it was 5 miles, to a hospital. Okay. All of which should not have been able to physiologically happen according to medicine. But it did. And so when you look at that and you ask him, what motivated you to do these superhuman things? And it was his desire, his drive to be a father. Okay. And his achievement motivation. So again, we look at things and examples and we're learning about motivation in all areas, whether it be sensation seekers and that adrenaline rush, whether it be, we're trying to understand weight. And the more we look at weight, the more we understand that it's biological. It has a huge biological motivation to it. Same thing with social. We need to be social. And that's one of the things that they're really worried about with the pandemic is that, we need to be social. We need to interact with other people. We're social animals. So, there are times in which we want to be social, but overall we need to be social or we won't survive. And so in these pandemics that cause us to isolate and quarantine, we're actually hindering a drive, a biological need. Okay. All right, so that's AP Learning Targets 1 to 5. That's motivation. If you have any questions, then just email me today. Again, and just last thing, make sure again, go to the module, make sure you get all those things turned in. So we have a code word for today. Again, you still have your quiz that's out there that's due by tomorrow. Your define and apply for units 7 and 11. And then unit 8, all you have is your AP notebook work and then just a define and apply, because we're going to move pretty quickly. We'll do motivation today and tomorrow, and then emotion on Thursday and Friday. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, let me know. Enjoy your snow day and the sun finally as it's out. And then also, I think as we speak for the first time, we are above freezing, or above 0, I should say. I think we're at 1 degree finally. 2 degrees. We're at 2 degrees now. Okay. So enjoy that. Okay. Bye.